Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. This is Pastor Jay Vinson here. Just want to personally thank each and every one of you all for chiming in today. For those that are tuning in right now, uh, even for those that are going to tune in a little later to this live stream and live podcast, we just want to personally thank you all for tuning in and even your support as well. I'm the founder of Jay Vinson Ministries Incorporated, as well as an author, spiritual life coach, youth life coach, high school teacher, man of many hats. So just want to personally thank you all for connecting with us today. I have a good friend of mine who's a pastor as well within the kingdom of God, straight out of Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama, Beham. So I just want to personally thank Pastor Michael K. Moore, also known as MK, for joining us today. This podcast name is entitled "Stepping into Greatness." This is a podcast live stream through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you can live stream any podcast. So we just want to personally thank you all again for chiming in today. If you could share this live video with your family, with your friends, and even in the comment section, let us know where you're tuning in from. Today, we have again Pastor Michael K. Moore, also known as MK Moore. He is the lead pastor of Faith Chapel out of Birmingham, Alabama, also Columbus, Georgia, as well. Let me just give you a brief bio of him. He's the lead pastor of Faith Chapel. He accepted the call to ministry in 2005 and began working for Faith Chapel in April 2006 under the leadership of his father, Dr. Mike Moore. In 2008, MK began graduate school, which allowed him to travel to Japan and London as a part of his studies. In 2011, he graduated with an MBA, and in the fall of 2012, was married to Michelle Scott. He and Michelle have three beautiful daughters, Megan, um, Margot, and Mikey. Hopefully, I pronounced that correct. After several years serving as executive pastor in January of 2023, MK stepped into the role of lead pastor. So again, we have Pastor MK Moore. How you doing today?
I'm good, Pastor Jay. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you on your podcast and to have an opportunity to speak with you and your audience. And congratulations on the new book that you have coming out.
Thank you so much, and definitely appreciate you accepting the invitation today to join me on this
Absolutely,
podcast.
it's my pleasure.
And most importantly, I want to say this real quick. Pastor MK was one of my endorsements of this book, Moving Past Your Pain, which is right here. Just want to personally thank you for endorsing the book as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I appreciate your heart to not only see your family thrive and be healthy, but all of our families thrive and be healthy. And so I appreciate all the time that you invested in this resource.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And thank you so much again. Well, we're going to go ahead and jump right on into it.
Got
There
it.
are
Let's do it.
several things within this book that I actually talked about. This was a vision that God had given me over the past year. I will say this: this book goes hand in hand with my last book, entitled "Stepping into Greatness: From Pain to Purpose and Promise." And like I said, the name of this book is entitled "Moving Past Your Pain." So we all know that in order for you to step into greatness, you have to overcome difficulties, overcome adversity, overcome all the pain that you have endured in life or that you may be currently going through in life right now. So, first thing I want to talk about is toxic or therapeutic. We
Mhm.
all are familiar with a famous individual. He's taken college football by storm. Over the
Absolutely.
past 3 years, he changed the culture at Jackson State University, and now he's leading the University of Colorado Buffaloes football program. None other than Coach Prime, also known as Deion Sanders. And we all know that when he was at Jackson State, he came in during COVID and took over the program. Actually changed the program And even when he changed the program, he changed how things were actually being ran before he even got there. And even during his time there, he was just changing the entire culture and the program of Jackson State football, not just the football program, but the entire athletic department as well as a whole. And last year, his last season, we all know that um they actually dominated the SWAC. And his last game before he ended up leaving and going to Colorado, they played in the Atlanta, Georgia area, where they was playing in the Celebration Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. And one of his players had actually dropped the game-winning touchdown pass, and he ended up receiving death threats after the game. And the gentleman was afraid for his life. Even his family received death threats also. So we all know that different people go through different things, and we know that we live in a technology world of today where people use social media for the wrong reasons and for the wrong motives, and they tend to say things on social media which they shouldn't be saying. And all these things can lead to a person being toxic or therapeutic. So when you actually saw that Pastor MK, what did you think of?
Yeah, I think that that is a very real scenario. I'll refer back to something that you referenced in your book. The very first sentence, I mean, very first sentence on the first page of your book is this: we all go through difficult things in life.
Yes.
And I think that that is so true. Um, I am of the Christian faith, so are you. Um, but even as Christians, even as believers, God never promised us that we wouldn't have adversity in life. That's nowhere in scripture. I believe as Christians, as believers, we have an advantage. But as long as we're in this earth and not in heaven, we're gonna have some adversity. Something that I think Coach Prime has excelled at, and it's something that you reference in that same scenario with him coaching Jackson State and in the beginning of your book, is you mentioned that we can't always control the circumstances that we find ourselves in, but we can always control our focus. And I think that is so critical. If I'm in the midst of adversity, there are going to be just some things about my circumstances that are that are outside of my power to control, outside of my power to change. But no matter what type of adversity I find myself facing, no matter how great the opposition, I'm never going to be at a loss where others choose my focus for me.
Yeah.
We're never powerless. We're never a victim in a situation as long as we can control our focus. And I think in that scenario with Coach Prime, last game of the season at Jackson State, um, they had won so many other games that season. And in one play, they lost in the championship. Well, it could have been very easy for him to count the whole season as a failure because they didn't
Yeah.
win the championship. But he chose for that not to be his focus. Um, the fans chose to focus on what one player didn't do
Mhm.
despite all of the amazing plays that he had made throughout the rest of the season. And so I think the lesson that we can all take from that is when I'm in adversity, when I do have that noise around me, because we're not in a world where everyone is going to affirm us, everyone is not going to celebrate us. We can always choose our focus. Coach Prime had to choose to focus on the positive things that they did accomplish in that season. I remember in that scenario, he talked up that tight end, he talked up that player, talked about how great of a player he was, a man of character he was. Even if you fast forward into his Colorado season, the Buffs are playing Colorado State, and one of Coach Prime's key players, Travis Hunter, gets hurt on a
Mm.
play. Well, after that game, the Colorado State player was getting a lot of death threats. Well, how Coach Prime chooses to use his influence in that moment would have a ripple effect. If he's talking about, hey, it's a dirty play, if he's talking about, hey, they were up against us and all of this, the rest of his players will hear that, the fans will hear that, the nation will hear that. He talked in a measured tone. He didn't attack the opposing team's character, and that had a trickle down effect. And I believe the reason that he responded that way is because of what he chose to focus on in that particular scenario. So again, we're not always in a position to change everything about our circumstances, but I think the power that we never lose is the power to choose our focus.
And he another thing that I realized as you were speaking is that he always tend to focus on the positive and not the
Yeah,
negative. And
yeah,
so many times the media tend to portray the negative instead of the positive. And
yeah,
as he always hold his press conferences, he always talks about the positive and not the negative, and the possibilities and not the problem all the time. And
absolutely,
that's how, that's how
absolutely.
he's able to just continue to focus forward and not dwell on what should have happened, what could have happened in the past. And that brings me to my next point is that in that same topic chapter where I talked about toxic or therapeutic, there are several key questions at the end of this topic. And the
Hmm.
first one that I was saying that I said was, is your use of social media upbuilding to others or detrimental? And if you follow Coach Prime, you always see that he's not posting negative stuff. He's always
Yeah,
posting uplifting stuff. He's always talking about God. He's always posting inspirational stuff to encourage and empower and equip this generation of today and even everybody else. And if he could have just, if he would have said some stuff that should have happened or could have happened. A good prime example with the Colorado State game that happened a few weeks ago, especially with the play that took out his key player, like you just said, past the MK, Travis Hunter. But he didn't dwell on, he didn't focus on, and he didn't even criticize the young man who took out his key player. But
yeah,
a lot of people may not have seen recently, these two individuals had a conversation one on one. Travis Hunter and the
yeah,
gentleman that actually took out Travis Hunter, they had a one on one conversation, and everything is all good today. And
yeah,
I actually saw that video last week, and I thought that was, very uplifting that those two individuals are not holding each other or having any animosity against each other. And I'm saying that, I said in that moment when I saw that, I was like, that right there is a good prime example of how everybody should operate and should, just sit down with someone who may just be holding animosity against somebody else just because what may have occurred, what may have happened.
absolutely. So two things I'll say about social media. You asked that question, how are we utilizing our social media? Is it in a toxic way? Is it in a therapeutic way to help other people? I think social media at its heart is amoral. It can be used for good, it can be used for evil. How it's used is ultimately going to be determined by the person who's using it. Um, the first thing that I would say about social media, we talked about focus, that can't always control the circumstance that I find myself in, but I can control my focus. A big part of me controlling my focus is controlling the voices that I'm listening to. If the voices that I am consistently listening to are negative, it's going to be hard for me to habitually listen to negative influences but have a positive outlook.
Mm.
However, the opposite is also true. If I am listening to positive, uplifting, life-giving voices, that's going to affect my perspective. It's going to affect my outlook. Um, um, Scripture says, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." But our thoughts are influenced by what we're hearing, and what we're exposing our eyes to on a regular basis. And so, even what I'm listening to on social media, what voices am I allowing to influence me through social media, I think plays a big part in determining what I'll focus on. The other side that I will say, with Coach Prime, is I think that he, obviously, you mentioned his social media is positive. That's not on accident. He's very intentional about the messaging that he's wanting to get out through social media. And I think his platform has grown, his influence has grown because he's been a good steward over it. Again, in the Christian faith, we believe that God watches how we steward what he entrusts to us. If God has given me as a pastor a platform through the pulpit, he's not given me that platform and that influence to get in the pulpit tearing people down. He's not given me that platform, that influence to get in the pulpit and start reading everybody and telling everybody's business. That would be an abuse of the influence that he's given me. Well, if God can entrust me with the degree of influence that he's given now, then it'll lead to growth of that. And so I think Coach Prime's intentional decision, I am going to use this platform that God gave me. And if you go back to his opening press conference at the University of Colorado, he credited him being there to God. He said, God is limitless. It's God that's the reason that I'm here. So he understands that the platform that he has to the nation was given to him by God. And I think him intentionally using it to uplift is part of the reason that God is continuing to expand his platform. And I think that's true in the whole of our lives. If I'm a good steward of the finances that God has entrusted me with, then God can trust me with more. If a leader, I'm a good steward of the people that he's entrusted me to lead and to shepherd, then he'll entrust me with more. And I think we can all take a lesson from Coach Prime on that.
And that actually ties into what I was about to get ready to say next. Everything you
Okay.
just touched on with the words that you speak.
Mm-hmm.
So we all know words have power, and
Mm-hmm.
I talked about that in the book as well. Words do have power, and even who you listen to, if you listen to someone
Mm-hmm.
who's always negative, you're gonna have
Mm-hmm.
a negative outlook on life, and you're gonna always say negative things. But if you're listening to someone who's positive and who's uplifting and who's speaking life and not death,
Yeah.
then you're gonna always speak life and not death. And
Yeah.
exactly what I talked about in the book, how words have power. Who are you inspiring? Who are you uplifting? And that actually ties into everything you just touched on. And I know good prime example, like you just said, if if you and I are in the pulpit and we not speaking life into people and we always
Mm-hmm.
knocking or tearing somebody down, then nobody's gonna listen to us.
Yeah.
And we have
Yeah.
to always speak life into every dead situation that someone may be going through, and we have to always be uplifting and encouraging somebody every step of the way. So that's what I was saying within this in this chapter here about watch your mouth. That's part
Yeah.
two, and
Yeah.
words have power. And also, I even talked about like in the questions, are you speaking life over yourself daily? Because that's very important. Like when you wake up in the morning, you
Absolutely.
have to speak life over yourself every single day.
Absolutely.
And have,
Absolutely.
have there been a time where you may have been down and out, and you felt like that you felt like giving up, and you just needed to just encourage yourself with whatever situation that you was going through?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, going back to your the first page of your book, we all have adversity in life. I think the words that we speak do have power. And I think when we understand that, we'll be more intentional with the words that we speak. Something that I try to practice, especially as a pastor, is because you are navigating through life situations with families. You hear their ups, you hear their downs. Because you're a leader and you're out front, there are going to be times where people are affirming of the decisions that you're making. Hey, I'm so proud of you. You're doing a great job. But that's not the full of the job. They're going to be criticism. Hey, I don't like that move that you made. I think that was the wrong decision. It just kind of goes with the territory. But we're all human. There are going to be times where we all feel um, a bit discouraged, especially if we're looking at our circumstances and they don't match the picture that we see in our head, or they don't match something that God has said. A habit that I try to do to encourage me, I do two things. One, I keep a journal. In my prayer time, as God speaks to me, I'll write down things that He says about my future, and I'll write down things that He says about me. And the reason that I write them down is life has a way of causing you to forget what God said if you don't have a way to capture it. And so when I'm in a hard place, when I'm facing an adversity and I'm discouraged by it, there are times where I'll pull that journal out and will just remind myself, okay, I don't see a way forward in this situation, but here's what God has said about my future. I don't feel equipped to make the right decision, or I don't feel adequate enough as a leader to lead through this big of a problem. But God has said this about me. God has said this about my leadership. And just taking time to remind myself of what He said, I found has encouraged me, because the circumstances, the situations that I'm up against, they're real. We're not denying the reality of them, but what God has said about me and what God has said about my future is the truth of the
Yeah.
situation. And so I'll take time to remind myself of the truth. Something else that I've recently started doing, I didn't do this for years, I've only recently started doing this. I'll have congregants from time to time who will give me cards, greeting cards, and they will write notes in the card. Pastor, we're proud of you. Pastor, you're doing a great job. Pastor, we're praying for you. Years ago, I would take cards that people would give me in that way. Thank you so much. I'd write them a thank you note, and then I'm typically throwing away the card. Now, what I actually do is I'll capture what people have said.
Yeah.
We're praying for you. We're proud of you. Hey, you're doing a great job. And I found, again, when it feels like the world is up against me from an opposition standpoint, I'll pull out some of those cards, I'll pull out some of those notes, and just seeing that reminder, hey, there are other people who are praying for me. Hey, there are other people who are being blessed by the areas of leadership that God has entrusted to me with. I found has encouraged me. So yes, words do have power, but I think there's times we say that God sees ahead and provides. I don't think that that's just limited to finances. I think that there's times where God can see, okay, he or she's going to be discouraged by what's going to be happening in a few weeks. So I am going to send the encouragement that they need ahead of time. I'm not going to wait till they get in the situation to begin to encourage them. I'm going to encourage them ahead of time. I'm going to begin to build them up ahead of time. I'm going to begin to affirm them ahead of time. And what I've tried to start doing now as a habit is capturing those moments of encouragement, and I found that they've been incredibly uplifting later down the road. And God has given me what I need, oftentimes in advance, because he not only can see ahead into my future, I found that He's providing what I need well in advance.
That's great stuff. That's great stuff there. And even from taking the mantle that your father have given you back in December of last year, you was an executive pastor. Now you're a lead pastor. Um, and I know that being a lead pastor comes with more responsibilities,
It
more
comes with
meetings,
more.
comes with a whole
Yes.
lot. And you are the main person that's out there. More so than being the executive pastor where you're supporting the lead pastor. So let's take this a little further. With
Mhm.
that in mind, from the executive pastor to the lead pastor, have there been days where you have been stressed out?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, there is a degree of ease. Ministry is incredibly rewarding. Um, I worked in corporate America for about 13 months, enjoyed it, super grateful that God gave me that opportunity. Um, but to see the work that I'm doing, the work that our team does, um, and the fact that it has eternal consequences, I think is incredibly rewarding. But it has highs, it has lows. Um, when you are in the second chair seat, your job is really to hear the vision of your leader
Yeah.
and to partner with them to help bring that vision to pass, to organize resources, people resources, financial resources, to organize things in alignment with where the leader um, has said that we're going. It's a little different once you switch seats. Um, my job is not to determine where our church needs to go in the future. In other words, this is not my church. So I am not responsible for its future. I am not responsible for figuring everything out of what's to come. My job is to spend time with God because it's His church and to hear what He wants, to hear the direction that He's wanting to go in, um, to listen well to Him, to come back to the congregation and share with them what I believe he said. So to a degree, it's work. You got to spend time listening to him. But it's less pressure on you when you don't assume ownership of it. If you assume ownership of the people, ownership of the church, I got to make it happen. I got to figure everything out. I got to make the right call on this. That's incredibly stressful. Um, it'll lead to anxiety. But we taught our congregation on depression and anxiety earlier this year. And one thing that I communicated to them is if you look at that word anxiety, right in the middle of the word is the letter I, ANXETY, but right in the middle of those three letters on either side is the letter I. And I mention that to say typically when I am feeling the most anxiety, it is because I either believe God doesn't see what I'm going through. I don't believe that he can help what I'm going through. So because he can't see my problem or because he's unable to help me with my problem, I alone have to figure it out. I alone have to pay for it. I alone have to come to the right conclusions. And that's not what scripture said. Scripture said, I'll never leave you or forsake you. He's going to be in there with you. Um, Trouble, persecution, stress can't separate you from his love. He's always going to care about what it is that you're going through, and he's able. There's never a situation that you're going to find yourself in that's too big for him, that's stopping him from a wisdom standpoint. And so when you understand, especially in leadership, my job is not to figure it all out. My job is to draw on my advantage. I'll use one more metaphor and then we can move on. If I am if I am playing spades and I look down at my hand and in my hand are all of the jokers, the ace, the deuce, I got a handful of spades. It's possible for me to have a hand that is so good, a hand that is so strong that it doesn't matter how weak my partner's hand is. The strength of my hand will overcome their weakness. Well, if you take that card game metaphor and push it over into spirituality, God's hand is incredibly strong. So it doesn't matter what weakness I feel like I am bringing to the table. He is my partner in ministry. He is my partner in life. He is my partner in terms of raising my family. And his hand is loaded. He knows everything. He's able to do everything. And the strength of his hand can overcome any weakness that I feel like I'm bringing to the table. When I realize that this life, ministry, anything that I'm facing is a partnership, and I am in partnership with the person, a teammate, a father who has a loaded hand, then it can help to minimize some of that stress because I don't feel like I'm in it by myself.
And I just want to add this as well, from a ministry standpoint. We know that we have heard quite a few individuals who have taken their own lives through
Mm-hmm.
suicide, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, the 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 load was just too heavy, that they
Mm-hmm.
just got burnt out, and
Mm-hmm.
they didn't know how to actually get the help, or they may have
Mm-hmm.
knew how to get help, but they just probably just didn't reach out for help. And
Mm-hmm.
what I've learned over the years in ministry is that if I am burdened and tired of a lot of things, it's okay to take a sabbatical.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times, us leaders, we tend to not take a sabbatical to actually come back re-energized. We tend to just
Yeah.
go and go and go and go and go, where eventually we just explode and we just
Yeah.
can't take it anymore. And even
Yeah.
not just in ministry, but in relationships as well, and even in life overall. A lot of times, what I've learned is that a lot of people just are burnt out from a lot of things, and they take on a lot of burdens of other people. And
Yeah.
when you begin to take on a lot of burdens of other people, then your plate is just going to be full. And
Yeah.
what I'm saying is, to those that are tuning in or going to watch this a little later, is that it's okay to say no sometimes.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
No is a complete sentence.
yeah, and when
Yeah.
you say no, even though it may hurt that person feelings, but you have to know how much you can handle. And
Yeah.
we all have heard of this gentleman named DJ Twitch. For those that are from
Mm-hmm.
Alabama and uh, worldwide, really, because he was known worldwide. We worked for Ellen DeGeneres. He was
Mm-hmm.
the DJ for her
The
television
DJ.
show,
Yeah.
and he's originally from my hometown in Montgomery. Didn't even know that we went to the same high school, even though
Wow.
he graduated way before I actually graduated from Robert E. Lee in Montgomery.
Okay.
And just hearing the stories from people who knew him, they knew that he was a good person, great person. He didn't let anything bother him or whatnot. They always said he was happy go lucky. But what they didn't know was that he was probably going through something internally where he just didn't get the help that he needed. And he
Yeah.
probably just had enough and he just took his own life. So what I'm saying is that if you know that you need help, it's okay to go get help. Um, Even for those that are believers and attend a local church, wherever you may be located, and you go for counseling, your pastor counsel you. But if you know that you need more than help outside of that, it's okay to go get the help.
Yeah.
I don't care what nobody may tell you that you don't need to go get the help. If you know that you need the help, go get the help. This is
Yeah.
from someone who is a certified life coach, where I've coached a lot of people to actually overcoming life adversity and finding their life purpose in life, and even having conversations with licensed therapists as well. And that's the
Yeah.
major problem in this world, that a lot of people don't get the help. until it's too late.
Yeah.
And I know that you and I had a conversation a few months ago, Pastor MK, about where you had talked about where you was going through something in your personal life where you
Mhm.
felt burden and you anxiety came on. And I know that you preached that you taught on that to your church at Faith Chapel in Birmingham. For those that are
Yeah.
just tuning in, can you just go in more detail what was going on during that time?
Yeah, absolutely. So before I talk about the anxiety, I want to piggyback off of something that you said about getting help. Um, I'll talk about emotional help, but to set it up, I'll talk about physical help. You have an athlete, they're playing football, they injured their knee on the game. They go off. Typically, that athlete is going to have a variety of people involved in their recovery journey.
Mhm.
There's going to be family encouraging them just in their emotions. Hey, we're here. We're standing with you. There's some emotional support that family is bringing. Generally, if the injury is bad enough, the athlete may need surgery. So now we got to bring in a surgeon who knows how to do that. After the surgery is complete, because healing is a journey, I don't wake up from the surgery and then I'm walking. Now I have to heal some of those physical wounds. That is a process. I'm having to engage with a physical therapist to kind of learn how to rehabilitate that knee. And in a physical wound like that, we would completely understand that it takes a community, it takes a village of support to get to health. There's something that you need from family, there's something that you need from your doctor. Your doctor, your surgeon is not the same as your physical therapist, and we wouldn't pick and choose how to get the help. We know it takes a comprehensive deposit to get to health. Well, I think the same is true emotionally. Just because a person has wounds of the soul that are on the inside that aren't visible, um, doesn't make them imaginary. They're real wounds. It can be real trauma. It can be real issues that people are dealing with. And there is a deposit that I believe the church should give. There is a deposit that biblical counseling should give, and we should take that. There is emotional support that family can give as I'm walking out my healing journey. We should embrace that. If it's anxiety or anything, sometimes depression, anxiety are connected to hormonal imbalances in the body. I think that we should pull in medical doctors, and they can have a contribution to make. Counselors and therapists, they're not going to make the same deposit as my medical doctor. And I don't think that we have to pick and choose. I think we understand with a physical wound, it's wisdom to incorporate the deposit of all of these players to get me to optimum health. And I think the same is true with emotional wounds, wounds of the soul. Don't pick and choose. Don't pick, okay, because I'm in faith, I can't go see a doctor. No, stand in faith, talk to your doctor. If your doctor prescribes medicine, take the medicine in faith. You don't, faith and medicine aren't mutually exclusive. It's a comprehensive journey. For me, I began to struggle with anxiety in my sophomore year of high school. I didn't know what it was. I was driving with my mom, had my learner's permit, and just began to kind of feel some sensations in my body. Now I know it was a panic attack. Back then, as a sophomore in high school, I didn't know what it was. But was having a panic attack, had to pull over on the side of the road. Mom asked me, "Hey, are you okay?" I think I'm fine, but I don't know what happened. We went to a doctor to kind of check me out to see what was going on. Doctor did a physical. He said in the room, "Hey, everything looks fine." But then he stepped outside of the room. I heard him over saying to my mom and somebody else, "Hey, it's all in his head."
Mm.
Well, it was in my head. It was something mental that I was dealing with, but hearing a trusted leader say that, I'm just 15, 16, I'm a kid,
Yeah.
shut me down. I thought, okay, got it. I opened up in this way. That's how you see this. Basically, the doctor was saying I was making it up. And so I shut down. I quit talking to my family about it, quit talking to girlfriends, friends about it. Duration of my high school career, suffered through anxiety and panic attacks through college into my adulthood, probably until I was about 28. Suffer with random panic attacks. It wasn't rational. It wasn't in just one place. And physically, it felt as if people were pricking my body with safety pins all over. Um, Mentally, I could not see a life because I had been struggling with it for so long. I could not see a life where I was free of panic attacks. I used to have thoughts after panic attacks that said things like, hey, you'll be an old man dealing with this. You will be 80 something years old still having these panic attacks. And I knew enough growing up in a word of faith environment not to say that, but those negative thoughts seemed incredibly real. I wasn't saying it, but I thought, yeah, I am going to be an old man dealing with this. And so, long story short, I ended up opening up to my dad, who was my pastor at the time. And he told me, hey, we're going to take a natural approach to this. We're going to incorporate doctors into this. Go to the doctor. Any medicine that they give you, we're going to lean into that. But at the root of anxiety is fear. We're going to attack it from a spiritual standpoint. And so I began to hear what God's word had to say about the area of fear and how fear was a spirit, and God hadn't given me a spirit of fear, and that Jesus suffered trauma on the cross in my place. And that I didn't have to put up with that and tolerate that because of his sacrifice and what he had done for me. And so just through faith and walking that process, man, God freed me from panic attacks at about age 28. I'm 41 now. And so I've been panic attack free longer than when I was in bondage. And so I would just say to any of your listeners, anybody who's going to go back and watch this, anything that you're dealing with, it could be depression, it could be anxiety, it could be an addiction, it can be anything. A part of the devil's tactic is to make us think that it's hopeless, that we'll be in this rut, in this problem, dealing with this addiction, dealing with depression all of our lives. Freedom is possible. It's not just a theory, it's possible. And I believe the key to that as a pastor is hearing what God has made available for us through the gospel.
That's great stuff. That's great stuff. And thank you for sharing that testimony with
Absolutely.
someone who's tuning in or going to watch this a little later to encourage someone. Um, we're not going to end off on that note, but we're going to end
Okay.
off on this note here about born to win.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody wants to win in the game of life, but in order to win in this game of life, we have to move past all these things that the enemy is putting in our path and even putting in our mindset. And once we move past all these things and have that foundation and biblical principles and learning about these things with what God has laid out for us to learn, and then we'll be able to know how to win in this game of life because
Mm-hmm.
he wants us to have an abundant life. And so many times, some people may not understand what abundance really mean until they actually get connected to other like-minded individuals who are
Mm-hmm.
winning in this game of life, and they'll be able to learn the abundant life and the prosperity life as well. Because well, what I realized, a lot of people tend to run from prosperity instead of running toward it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not just speaking from a financial standpoint when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
prosperity, because prosperity is
It's
wholeness and
holistic. Yeah, it's
holistic.
holistic.
And when you come into this abundant life and prosperity life, you'll be able to win in this game of life with how God wants you to win every step of the way. And as long as you have breath in your body every single day, you'll be able to learn these principles, practical principles that's laid out for everybody. and not just the believers, but even for those who may be starting out within the kingdom, and even for
Mhm.
those that may not even know God at all. How can you encourage someone today as we get ready to close out about you're born to win and God wants you to win in this game of life?
Yeah. I would say a couple of things. One, I think winning starts with hearing.
Mhm.
So let me tell you what I mean by that. Jesus taught a parable. He said that you have two builders. One guy builds his house on a sand foundation. Storm comes, adversity comes, challenge comes, wipes out his house completely. Another guy builds a house, but Jesus said he builds his house on a foundation. He builds his house on a rock. Same storm comes. Bible says rain, wind blew, rain fell down, floods arose. So this house is getting hit on all sides, yet the house stood. And Jesus said that the difference between the two houses, because the houses were metaphors for people, were people who came to him, heard what he said to do, and in one case, one guy heard what Jesus said and he put it into practice. He didn't just hear it, he did it. The guy who built his house on sand, Jesus said, was the person who heard what God wanted him to do, but didn't put it into practice. So I think the key to standing, the key to winning, to use your term, the key to making it through the storm, through the adversity, is I first have to hear, okay, what did God tell me to do? Because I can't be in a storm wrestling with this question, should I even be doing this? I gotta know, hey, I'm anchored. I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm doing what he wants me to do. That's a part of that. Once God has told me what I'm supposed to do and I begin to walk it out, expect adversity.
Yes.
Jesus didn't say that the person who stood had no rain, had no storm. Expect it. We're not in heaven. That means that an aspect of faith is going to require mental toughness. When I think of mental toughness, I think about Noah. God speaks to Noah. Noah, rain is coming, a flood is coming. Noah don't know what rain is. He'll know what a flood is. But God tells him to build an ark to save his family. And Noah has no architectural degree. He has no architectural college that he can go to teach him how to build. He's never built a structure like this in his life. Nobody has built a structure like this in his life. We talked about drawing on wisdom from other people. He has nobody that he can go to for affirmation. He has nobody that he can go to say, Noah, you're doing a great job building that boat. They don't know what a boat. They don't know what a boat is. You got people who didn't hear what God told Noah to do. So they're looking at him, seeing him build this boat for rain. They don't know what rain is. I'm sure they ridiculed him. I'm sure they talked about him. I'm sure they called him crazy. Yet Noah was in a place of obedience. He was doing what God told him to do. He was doing what he had heard, yet people were criticizing. So when we were talking about, hey, it's important what you hear, it's important that you guard your mind from negativity. I want to balance that by saying there are going to be times where you have to obey God, and it's public obedience. What God was asking Noah to do was too big for him to hide in his prayer closet. No, this is public faith. I got to publicly obey God. And he had to be mentally tough
Mhm.
to navigate through all of the criticism and the ridicule and the persecution that came with it. Once you know what God has told you to do, you need to take enough time to hear from God. Where should I be? What do you want me to do? Because your key to success is going to be in doing what he told you to do. Not a good idea, but a God idea. Expect the adversity, develop mental toughness, and don't quit. Don't quit. The only way that you can lose is if you quit. If you quit, you're guaranteed to not win. See it through, be mentally tough, and know that the same God who told you to do it, and again, that's key, he resources what he commands. The people that you need, the finances that you need, the wisdom that you need, it's in the word, it's in the instruction that he's given to you.
That's great stuff. That's powerful. And that's basically what I always tell a lot of individuals who I actually talk to, even ministering to as well. You have to hear from God first before you make any move or any decision. And when you hear from God and when God gives you confirmation, act out on it. Don't wait till it's too
Yeah,
late because
yeah,
you're gonna miss the blessings that God has for you. So you have to learn how to hear from him first. And then
yeah.
once you receive confirmation, make a move and don't
Yeah,
delay it.
he
Don't
doesn't confirm culture. He doesn't confirm what's popular, what everybody else is doing. He doesn't confirm what mom them said. Mom them may not understand it. Obey God. Mom them will understand it after the fact. They may call you crazy now. Pastor Mike Todd says it like this: it's only crazy till it happens.
mm-hmm.
What people call crazy now, when it shows up, when it manifests, they ain't gonna call you crazy when it happens. And so the key is taking the time to hear from him, and then seeing it through.
Yeah.
Don't quit.
And as Pastor Mike Todd always say, crazy faith. When you get confirmation,
Mhm.
take that leap of crazy faith, trusting and believing the plan that God has for your life. Um,
Absolutely.
this this has been a phenomenal time with spending time with you this afternoon, talking about moving past your pain. Again, for those that are tuning in, for those that may be tuning in a little later, again, we just thank each and every one of you all for taking time out today to listen to a good friend of mine and brother, Pastor M.K. Moore, all the way from Birmingham, Alabama, the lead pastor of Faith Chapel, Birmingham, and Faith Chapel, Columbus, Georgia. So if you're anywhere in the Birmingham, Alabama area, I highly recommend that you guys go check out Faith Chapel every Sunday. And services is at what time again, Pastor MK?
Services at our Birmingham campus are every Sunday, 10:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. And in our Columbus, Georgia campus, they are on Eastern Time. Their services are at 11 a.m.
There you go. So you guys go check them out. If you're anywhere in the Columbus, Georgia area or nearby, go check out them in Columbus. Even in the Birmingham metro area, if you're nearby in Birmingham, go check them out as well. You won't be disappointed by the worship and the word as well. So, thank you all again for tuning in today. If you haven't already done so, I highly recommend that you guys get your hand on Moving Past Your Pain. This is a powerful book for those that like easy read, short, directly to the point. This book is directly for you. And after every chapter, every section have thought-provoking questions. Um, you won't be disappointed. You can order your signed copy by going to www.jvinson.org. Again, this podcast is entitled Stepping into Greatness. It is live streamed through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you live stream your podcasts. We highly recommend that you guys go back a little later and check out the live podcast. Always remember this: every single day of your life is a day of purpose. Till next time, you guys stay blessed and always remember to keep God first in everything that you do. Keep going and don't stop.